project because it's fun and sometimes pastors are funny and you learn about the whole story of the Bible. I like gospel projects because we get store nights and we get to learn about God.
Welcome to church. You may be seated. How many of you guys just love the weather outside? You love getting up and putting your coat on and being reminded that we're still in April and we're still in South Dakota. We will get through this together, okay? We will get through this together. This morning we have an exciting passage that we're going to go through, but it's actually my wife's birthday today. She's actually here. I don't know where she's at. I don't think she wants me to know most of the time where she's at when she comes to see me preach, but it's her birthday today, and I'm really excited about that. So you have to make sure, I need to impress her, okay? So make sure you laugh at all my jokes, okay? I need that affirmation from you guys. I need her to think that I'm really funny and a big deal because we're going on a really hot date after this, okay? We're going to go through the drive-thru at McDonald's, then we're going to go home and probably watch a TV show, okay? It can be super romantic, okay? But no, we have an exciting time today, and I want to start off our time together I guess first by introducing myself. If you are new with us this morning, my name is Pastor Micah Westby. I'm the downtown campus pastor. I come here periodically and preach when Rodney's gone, or like today, we'll switch spots and he is downtown. And so that's who I am. I would love to meet you if I have not already. I will be out kind of wandering around. I would love to shake your hand and get to know your name a little bit. And so please do that. Don't be shy. Come and introduce yourself to me, or find me, if you will. But I want to start this morning by sharing a little story that happened between me and my wife, something that really tested our marriage, something that I may have shared this before, so just bear with me if you've heard it. But we used to live in Portland, Oregon. We lived there for 4 years. We got married between my junior and senior year, and we lived in this wonderful, actually decent-sized apartment right in the heart of Portland. Okay, and it's kind of a sketchy area. It's right off of 82nd Avenue, and so if you know anything about Portland, that's a really sketchy street. A lot of crime happens on that street. A lot of interesting characters kind of habitate that area. It's a very, very strange part of the city of Portland, and we live like literally 2 blocks off of this street in a very, very sketch part of town. And in this apartment, when it would come nighttime, like you knew that this wasn't just like, living over in the neighborhood in Aberdeen where you pretty much know everybody. I mean, it was a really busy area, really dark, and kind of scary. Okay, and so we had this apartment, and our bedroom was kind of tucked in the back, and one night we were getting ready to go to sleep, and we heard something, okay, which wasn't necessarily uncommon, but we heard something, and it sounded like it was like near our apartment, or maybe even like at a door, right? And so both of us kind of like, everything tightens up, like you know how you get when you get a little scared and you're like, oh shoot, that's like really close, okay? And we look at each other, and she basically is like, hey, are you gonna go check that out? And I was like, yeah, I was just about to do that, okay? Let me get up from my warm, comfortable bed that's no longer comfortable, and I'll go wander the hallways of our house to find an intruder, right? Like, what am I supposed to do when I find him? And so I sheepishly walked down this hallway, and there was a guest room on the left, and the hallway kind of veered to the right, and there was a bathroom over here. And so I, go to the first room, flip the light on real quick, shut it off, making sure there's nobody in there. You know how you do that, you like check the room, but then like you back off and kind of poke your head in. Okay, and I check the bathroom, go down the hallway, go to the living room, check the kitchen, make sure everything's safe, breathe a sigh of relief. I turn around, and as I'm walking back, apparently my wife decided that she needed to follow me because I'm going to miss something. And she goes into the bathroom, which the lights are off, and she just so happened to wear like black leggings all the way down, a black long sleeve shirt. I'm pretty sure she even wore like a ski mask or something. I don't know. But I'm walking by, going back to the room, all comfortable, knowing everything is okay. And she comes out of the bathroom with this face, right? Like, hey, I checked the bathroom, and I literally freeze in my spot, and I just stop, and I like lean back like this, and I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything for like 2 seconds. I was just like, like, what are you doing? Like, you asked me to go do this, and now you're checking the bathroom? Like, what are you gonna do if you find him in there? Like, seriously. And she terrified me. She made me stop in my steps, and I realized, like, I'm not this big machismo dude that can, take down the intruder. Like, I'm gonna freeze. Like, if you break into my house, you get free stuff, okay? Because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do anything, right? But here's the point of this story this morning. We're looking at a church that is in the city of Smyrna, and they face a lot of fear in their life. They're going to go up against a lot of tribulation and heartache. They're going to face poverty because of oppression that's going to happen to them because of their faith. And what Jesus is going to do with them, as we're going to read in just a moment, is he's going to encourage them to have no fear. He's going to say things like, do not fear. Do not fear what's about to come, because oftentimes what happens to us is when fear sets in, we freeze. Just like I did in the hallway that evening, right? Just like my wife caused me to do, and I'm sure she'll probably try that this evening too. She'll be like, go check the house, and she'll try to scare me, okay? But we freeze under pressure, and Jesus knows this. And so this morning, what we're gonna look at is, what does it look like to have the faith of someone who's fearless? What is the faith of the fearless? So open your Bibles to Revelation chapter 2. We're gonna start in verse 8. Revelation 2, verses 8 through 11. It says this, and to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, the words of the first and the last, who died and came to life. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but they're of the synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. As we approach this scripture, we need to understand the location that we're talking about. The city of Smyrna, just like the city of Ephesus, right, was kind of a roaring town in Asia Minor back in the days when this was written. It was located 50 miles north of Ephesus. And if you remember Ephesus, it was a harbor city, right? And because it was a harbor city, ships would come in and out, and they were a great place of commerce, very wealthy, very rich. Smyrna's the same thing. They're a harbor city, right? They have a port there. They're an important trade destination that people would come to. They would do business there. It was a beautiful city. Very, very wealthy. A lot of money wrapped up in it. You can actually go online and see these beautiful pictures of the marketplace, and there are these giant stones that have been carved out of mountains and put in these archways that literally still stand today. Just one after another, after another, after another. It's an incredible feat of human design, but it was a place that was very wealthy. It was a place that was very sophisticated. It had over 100,000 people that lived there. It was a city of science and medicine. This was a city that was always on the front lines of technology, right? They're always out there discovering new things and pushing forward civilization. It was a place that was full of guilds, right? Some of you are like, guilds, what does that mean? Think of like the masons here in town mixed with a trade, mixed with craftsmen, right? So you had like basket guilds where people would come and they weave baskets to go fishing. There were tanners and silversmith guilds and goldsmith guilds. They were always discovering and finding out new and better ways to deal with things like gold and silver and animals. And so because of this, it was a very wealthy city. It was a very sophisticated culture. They knew a lot of things, right? This community, it was almost as if you didn't bring something to the table, you would get pushed out of it. But one thing you had to do, if you were a man and you wanted to work in one of these guilds, if you wanted to have access to it, you would have to make a sacrifice to the emperor. Now, this point is really important. You would actually have to make a sacrifice to the emperor. One thing that Smyrna loved is they loved Rome. You remember hearing when we were in Mark that there was always this tension between the people in Rome, right? The Jewish people, they did not want anything to do with Rome. They wanted them gone. When you come to this city that we're reading about today, it's the exact opposite. They loved the government. In fact, in 20 AD, right around the time where this started becoming a big deal, they built a temple to the emperor Tiberius. They actually worshiped the emperor. The Roman emperors came on the scene and they said, hey, we're not just your king, we're not just your emperor, we're actually deity. We are actually God incarnate here on earth. We are a gift from the gods, but we're not just a gift, we're more than that. We are actually God himself. And they began to prop themselves up, and it became more potent and more powerful as time went on. These emperors were like, I'm this big of a deal that you need to sacrifice not just to the God of your city, not just to Diana like we talked about last week, but you need to sacrifice to me, the emperor. And so if you wanted to become a part of this sophisticated, tech-savvy culture and community, you had to say, you know what, Jesus, I know the message is you're the only way. But if I'm going to live my life, if I'm going to operate in society, if I'm going to trade, if I'm going to be the master craftsman you call me to be, I need to sacrifice to the emperor. And so all of a sudden there became this contradiction that was happening within the people who were in the church of Smyrna. Because now they're faced with a reality that's not like the one Jesus presented. It's, do you follow Jesus, or do you go the way of culture? Do you go the way of tech? Do you go the way of society and say, you know what, I will make a sacrifice to the emperor? And so there begins to be this conflict. There begins to be this pain, and you can start to see how, when Jesus is writing to this city, how he's talking to them in this way and why he's talking to them the way he is. Because they are facing, and they're about to face, some severe, severe persecution. He says things like, he talks about how, you know, you are in poverty, yet you are rich. You know what he's talking about? He's not talking about people who are just poor by nature, right? Jesus says things like, you will always have the poor with you. He's not just writing to that group. He's writing to people who had homes. He's writing to people who had stuff. They had material possessions. And he's saying your poverty, which is really your riches, that poverty is because they had lost everything, or they were in process of losing everything. They had lost any sort of religious exemption from the Roman government. The Jewish people were outing them and telling them, hey, these Christians, they're not like us. In Hebrews 10:34, the same thing is happening to the Christians at Rome. And he says, you've accepted joyfully the seizure of your property, knowing that you have for yourselves a better possession and a lasting one. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. Even when the book of Hebrews was being penned, which is totally separate from Revelation, the Christians were losing their property. They were losing everything that they had worked so hard for. It was being taken away. That's who Jesus is writing to in the story. He's writing to people who have been rejected by society. He's writing to people who don't fit in with everybody else because they believe in something that's bigger and better than anyone else in the world believes. This is who Jesus is writing. So the first point I want to give to you this morning is that slander is the starting point. Slander is the starting point. The Jewish community saw the Christians as a danger, right? We talked about emperor worship. The Romans gave Jews an exemption. Remember, they're monotheistic. They don't believe in a whole bunch of different gods. They only worship one God. So Rome said, you know what? We don't want to have to deal with this. We're going to grandfather you in. When you make these sacrifices, do it in honor of Rome. You don't have to give them to the God, but do them in honor of them. And so they would. And so Christians, for the longest time, they kind of filled in underneath that. They kind of came under the umbrella of the Jews, and they had this exemption because they're pretty Jewish, right? But then the Jews started seeing this, just like they did to Jesus. The Jewish community starts seeing this, and they begin to oust the Christians and say, look, they're not actually one of us. This exemption you gave us, that doesn't belong to them. They worship a different God. They have a triune God. They believe in Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's very different than us. And they began to slander the Christians of this particular community. They began to out them and say, look, these Christians aren't one of us. You need to do something about it. They're endangering this community. They're endangering this culture. The guilds that you have spent years creating, these people are now endangering that. They're going to tear everything apart, these Christians are. So you have to do something about it. They're breaking your law. They're breaking your rule. They're not like everybody else. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound familiar with our culture, living in a community where tech is at the forefront of society, where the advancement in knowledge is something that is lifted up as like the ultimate human good? If we could just learn more, then we'll be better people. If we can just figure out the cure for X, Y, and Z, then we won't have to worry about that, and that's going to help us be better people. If we can just get the right scientific knowledge, then we can create the discoveries, and then we can send a ship to Mars. And if we can land on Mars, then there's hope that we're going to carry on and continue as a species. I think when you look at the situation that's surrounding Smyrna, what we realize is that America, South Dakota, our community, our culture is really not that far off from this. And I'm not trying to scare. This isn't like an apocalyptic message, even though it's coming from an apocalyptic book, I guess, right? But what I'm saying is as time goes on, as people begin to see the claims that you and I believe in, they begin to realize, look, I don't know if I'm going to change their mind. And if I can't change their mind, I can't change them. And if I can't change them, then guess what? Maybe we can't work together after all. And so things get more polarized. Does this sound familiar? Things get more intense. Things get more heated. People start pushing each other away. And instead of coming together in brotherly love, we begin to be filled with hate towards one another. That's what happens to this church. And this is what Jesus says to them. Hold on. Tribulation's coming. They're going to reject you. They're going to push against you. They're going to fight you. But you need to hold on. Slander is the starting point. They're going to lie about you. They're going to push you down. They're going to say things that aren't true. They're going to say, hey, this is who Micah is. What is slander? It's when you take someone's name and you run it through the dirt. It's when you have someone that maybe you were friends with before, but they've done something. Something's changed in your relationship, and you no longer trust them. And you take their name and you say, you know what? This is who Micah is. Micah does this. And Micah does this. And do you really want to be around someone like that? Do you really want to hang out with somebody like that? We all do this in little ways to people, don't we? It starts off as things like gossip. You see that lady, ladies, I don't mean to stereotype, but I'm going to for a minute. Don't worry, men, I'll get you in a second, okay? But when that lady comes in and they look nice and you think, oh man, she's just posing, right? She's look how she did her makeup today. And at the reality, the heart of it is that we're jealous, right? We're jealous because, man, they look fly and I don't. And so what do? I mean, what do? Like I'm a woman, right? What do you do? Right? You put them down. The guys do the same thing. We do it in different ways. When we see a guy that comes in who has gravitas and he carries with him respect and leadership, right? There's part of us that's like, man, that guy, look at him. He's nothing but a big talker. We take someone that we think is better than us, or we see them and we say, you know what, they might be a little bit better than us. We try to tear them down. And we gossip about them and we do things to make ourselves feel better. Why? Because we fear something. We fear something that they have that maybe we want, or we get insecure because we don't have that. It happens on a big scale with tech and culture, but let me tell you something. It boils down to the very personal. If you're an athlete, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get that person that plays the same position or the same spot as you, and they're really good, and you're like, man, I don't know if I'm ever that good. What do? Maybe you go to the teammates and say, hey, man, did you see what he was doing last night? What a fool. We start tearing down their character. We start running their name through the dirt. That's what slander is, and it is so detrimental to the gospel. But at the heart of it, this is what I want you to get. At the heart of it, it's fear. They might take something that I want. Their presence poses the potential of change, and change inherently carries with it fear. It can be a good fear, it can be a bad fear. We can react positively or negatively to it, but it presents change to us. And we as people, we hate that kind of change. It creates fear. See, there's a physical reality to fear, and you know what I'm talking about. The second point is this: fear is a choice. Write that down. There's a physical reality to fear. And I know each of you know what I'm talking about because Twistcone has been open now for a few weeks. And you know when you're standing in line at Twistcone, those punks drive by and they're lifted trucks with their big exhaust pipes and they hit the gas and their fart cannons go off and everybody tenses up, right? Like there's a physical reality that comes with that fear. I myself have done this too, and I think I might have shared this story as well, but I'm going to share it again. Okay, I have participated in the terrifying of young children and mothers and fathers. Okay, my brother-in-law was here, and I had this 2000 Nissan truck, right? It was super ghetto. I mean, it was literally this tall, right? I mean, it was probably this far off the ground. The tires were like bald. Rust was everywhere. If you look inside close enough, the fabric had become detached from the glue, and so it just kind of like, dropped down. So when you got in, you like kind of had to mess your hair up a little bit because it was just bad, right? But I had my brother-in-law, and I'm like, we're at Twistcone, we're gonna leave, let's give him the full experience. And so I pulled out, had my window down, my crank window down, I had my arm out, and I'm like, these kids are about to scream, right? I pull out, I drop it in neutral, and I rev my engine really, really loud. I mean, it was zzz, it was powerful, right? I mean, it was really, really powerful. And I anticipated hearing the screams of the children and the moms and the dads all clenching up. And as I look over, I realize there's no fear. It's just them laughing at me. And so I hung my head in shame, and I awkwardly rolled the window up. And with the window, like, you had to kind of like crank with one hand and like hold the window back, otherwise it'd fall out of the railing, and it wouldn't close right. And so I awkwardly cranked it back and, awkwardly popped it in drive and drove off, right? But there's a physical reality to fear. Obviously, that's not very fearful, but you know what I'm talking about. When something happens, when there's a change in the environment that you were not expecting or that was out of the blue, it creates fear. It causes us to freeze. It causes every muscle in our body to tighten up. There was some research done where it said, this is literally a quote from research that came out of a university. It says this: fear triggers a certain part of your brain that causes stress hormones to be released, causing your heart rate to increase. It causes your blood flow to actually change, so more blood flows to your arms and legs, making it easier for you to throw punches or run for your life. There's a natural physical reality to fear that causes your heartbeat to increase, that pushes blood to your hands and your feet, causing you to either run away from fear or to fight. That's the reality of fear. Jesus knows this. He knows that there's believers who are facing cultural pressures. He knows there's believers who are facing slander, who are being put to the test, and their faith is being challenged. He knows that in their brain, they're literally asking the question, do I stay here and fight the good fight, or do I run away? Do I say, you know what, yes, I believe in Jesus, but I'm not going to do it exactly his way. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make the sacrifices that they've asked me to make because I want to be a part of the groups that they're a part of. I want to be a part of culture. I don't want to miss out on things. And if I follow Jesus, that might push me even to death. That's the reality these people are facing. This is what is going through their mind. Jesus knows this. They're at a spot where it's either time to step up or it's time to run away. See, fear reveals focus. It reveals where we're at. My little Elsie's starting kindergarten next year, and I can guarantee you when she takes her first step out of the vehicle, she's going to be a little scared. My wife's going to be a little scared. Sorry, honey, right? Why? Because there's something changing. It reveals your focus. It reveals where your security is at. Imagine if they were to get out of the vehicle. Imagine if your little one on the first day of school, they get out and they go to school for the first time. Imagine you're watching them walk away and you have that fear. Are they going to make it? Are they going to make friends? Are they going to be able to take that next step into society? Are they going to be able to do all those things that I had to do when I was a kid? Are they going to be able to do that? And imagine you say no. And you go back and you grab your child by the hand and you bring them back to the car and you say, you know what? I don't think you're ready. Let's go home. That fear reveals your focus. It reveals that, you know what, it has probably less to do with your child being ready and more to do with, are you ready? And that fear causes you to pause and prevent them from taking a step forward. That's just a simple, silly. The fear that sets in is this going to work out? Oftentimes what you see when there's a new boss or a new manager is people. Why? Because something changed that they weren't ready for. Something changed that was difficult for them to process, and the fear pushed them in a different direction. Fear reveals focus. What is it that you're actually focused on? If your faith is nothing more than an afterthought, then when fear sets in, guess what won't be your focus? Jesus. Whatever your focus is will automatically come to the surface and you'll know exactly what it is. Because when something changes, we have to change. And we can either stop it or we can move forward with it. But the right focus helps us navigate fear. There's a show my daughter watched called Xavier Riddle. Okay, I don't know too much about it. I watched an episode with them, and it was awesome. And it's a story of these three kids, and it's this cool animated commercial on public broadcasting, and they go back in time and they meet these historical figures. And they have these awesome interactions. And so the one I was watching with them, they went back in time and they met a young Harriet Tubman. They met a little girl who was enslaved on a plantation in Maryland. And they have this interaction with her where they're getting to know her, and it's in little kid fashion. And so the things they're talking about are heavy and horrible things, but they're doing it in a way that maintains the innocence of kids, yet teaches them about the brutal history of the past. Right? And they're interacting with Harriet Tubman, and they're building a relationship with her, and it jumps them ahead 24 years to when she's an adult, and she's back in Maryland. She's earned her freedom. She's back in Maryland, and the kids are there, and they're like, "Oh, Harriet Tubman, you're here. What are you doing back here? You've received your freedom." She says, "I'm here to set my family free. I'm here for my parents." And so they have this whole conversation, and this is what Harriet Tubman says to the kids. There's this moment in the video where she's got her parents, she's running away from the person that represents enslavement, right? The person that used to own her. They're running away, and they're stuck behind this stand, and he comes walking out. He's literally what separates them from freedom. There's a train on the other side that they're trying to get to. And so literally the person that represents enslavement, the person that represents fear in her life, the kids are hiding with Harriet Tubman. And they say, "Harriet, aren't you scared?" And she's sitting there and she's nervous, and she's trying to deal with the fear of what she sees right in front of her, the person that held her and her family captive. The kids say, "Aren't you scared, Harriet?" And this is what she says to them. She says, "Yes, I am, but real courage is bravely moving forward even when you're scared." Real courage is bravely moving forward even when you're scared. And so the question I want to ask you is, why did Harriet fight so hard? Why did she face her fears? It's because there was a relationship attached to it. I would say it's because the idea of freedom is so great, but the idea of freedom is so great is because, in her mind, it's because she wanted it for the ones that she loved. There was a relationship attached. She was willing to face her fears because she knew if she didn't, it was back to the plantation. It was back there, not just for her, but for the ones that she loved. It was her family that she fought for and overcame fear for. There was a man named Polycarp who lived in the city of Smyrna, the city that we're talking about today. He faced the culture. He went through all of this stuff. And in 155 AD, he was killed for his faith. This guy was literally a disciple of John, the person who penned the book of Revelation. He sat at his feet for years upon years upon years. He had read through the book of Revelation over and over and over again. He had read the text that we are reading today. He had read about his hometown. He had read about what was happening to them so long ago. And in 155 AD, the Romans call his name and they say, "Polycarp, will you sacrifice to the emperor or not?" He says no. They tie him up to a stake and they light him on fire. And this is the words he said before he died. He said, 80 plus 6 years I have followed him, and he has done me no wrong. They light him on fire. The fire doesn't kill him, so they end up stabbing him to death. That's the story of a man who lived literally in this city. He laid everything on the line for Jesus. He faced his fears personally. He faced the fears personally, and because he was able to do that time and time and time again, when it came time for his number to be called, he stood up and said, "I will follow Jesus even unto death." Are you willing to follow him with everything? Are you willing to let him change you? Are you willing to let him provide you with opportunities that might be uncomfortable for you, that might create fear, but instead of causing you to freeze, would you move forward with courage? Would you move forward with courage, knowing that he has your back? Jesus doesn't want just part of you, he wants all of you. Is Jesus a convenience for you? Is Sunday morning just a part of a routine? Is faith just something you do to help you cope with the realities that are happening right now? Or is it everything for you? Is it your life? Is Jesus everything? This is the last point. The faithful church gets the crown. Like, we know what it looks like to follow Jesus, right? Imagine you're at the Brown County Fair, okay? Okay, you're walking through the expo building, and you hit up the different stands, you go, you check out the booths, you get your little milkshake. I went there with Rod one time, and we literally it was a pastor's meeting. We just sat in the massage chairs, right? Did a trial run. We were both looking at buying it, even though we knew we weren't, okay? I don't know. They knew him by name. It was really weird. But imagine being at the Brown County Expo and seeing the Jesus booth, okay? And there's advertisements out for Jesus to come follow him, right? You can come follow the rabbi, the teacher. And you go up to his booth, and he gives you a card, and he says, hey, follow me, but make sure you read the fine print. And the warning, there's a label on the warning, right, that basically says may cause death. Okay, following Jesus may cause you to be ostracized from your family and friends. Like, okay, I'm going to follow you, Jesus, but like, could lose my family and friends? All right, that's intense. You may be shunned by society. You may be, I don't know, one day kicked off Facebook, right? Half people are like, no, I can't do that, right? You may even die one day. Imagine having that card. What would you do if you were just an average person? Jesus, I could follow you and maybe die, or I could have everything else. What is it about Jesus that's so motivating? What is it about Jesus that is so enticing and so powerful that would make someone want to lay their life down for this man? Reject everything else that society brings, that culture gives you. What would make someone want to say no to all of that when this is what you might get? I think the answer is this. The faithful church, they get the crown. The faithful church, they get the crown. Jesus shows us two things. This is what should motivate us to fight our fear. When it says, do not fear death, this is what motivated the people. This is what has to motivate us now, even in our comfort. Even as we drive our nice cars around, even as we go back to our nice homes that are air conditioned and heated for us, this has to be our motivation. He says in Revelation 2:10, be faithful unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. He shows us a reward. And this crown that he's talking about, this crown of life, isn't a crown that you would think a king would wear. This isn't a gold-plated crown with gems infused to it to show how rich and wealthy and powerful you are. No, this crown was given to an athlete. The Romans knew this. The Greeks knew this. Smyrna knew this. They had a Colosseum. They had athletics that would happen there. The crown that an athlete would get would be like this viney crown that would have leaves that would grow off of it, and it meant to represent the best of life. You were the best athlete. You achieved the greatest, and so you got the greatest crown, and they put the crown on your life, and you represented the best of society. This is the best of clothing that they would give you. And the church, they knew about these crowns. And Jesus brings them this image, and he says, I'm going to give you a crown. In James 1, verse 12, it says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. Jesus gives them a crown of life. Why would that be so important to these people? The first thing Jesus does is he offers them a reward. The reason this reward is so powerful, the reason why it's so important for them to see this so they would reject culture and follow Jesus is because of what it represents. Jesus is handing them a crown of life. You may die, and when you do, you're going to be met at the gates of heaven, and I'm going to give you this crown. Here's the reality of the crown. This is what it means. Jesus can give them the crown of life because he wore the crown of death, and they knew it. Jesus gives them the crown of life, and they hold on to it tightly. It represents the best of, because Jesus went to the worst. And when he was at the place of deepest fear and deepest darkness and deepest suffering, they put a crown on his head, they dressed him up in a purple robe, and they led him to a cross, and they mocked him, and they abused him, and they slandered his name. And they said, this is the King of the Jews. Look how mighty he is. They mocked him. They nailed him to a tree with the crown on his head, and there he died. What these Christians realized, and the reason they held on so tightly to Jesus, is because they realized he put on the crown of death. And what he comes to them offering now is life and life abundantly. It doesn't matter what they do to you now, because one day when you die, it's not just death, but you're going to transition. It actually says that they're saved from the second death. You will not experience the wrath of God because Jesus already did. So when he says you get the crown of life, they understand fully because he took the crown of death. He went to a cross and he died for my sins. Something changed in our relationship with God, where I'm no longer righteous because I have sinned. I fall short of his glory and his grace. I have fallen short. All have sinned. But while we were yet sinners, Christ died for the ungodly. The reality of the crown of life is it shows us that Jesus wore the crown of death, the crown that really belonged to us. And in return, he gives us grace. The second thing he shows us is he shows us himself. In verse 8, it says, to the angel of the church of Smyrna write, these are the words of the first and the last, the one who died and the one who came to life. The ultimate motivation for facing the fear of death is none other than the one who conquered it himself. Jesus knows our suffering because he went through it already. The church of Smyrna can find comfort in the words of Christ because he's already gone through what they're about to go through. He's gone through death just like they will. And now he rose to life, and that's the life they offer. Do you know why Jesus went to the cross for you this morning? Do you know why Jesus went to the cross? It's because there was a relationship attached to it, and that relationship was you. Jesus went to the cross to fulfill the plan of God, but he went to the cross because he wanted you. He was Harriet Tubman. We were the slaves. He came and he saved us. That's a love unlike anything else. Do you know that Jesus this morning? Do you know the Jesus of the gospel? Do you know a Jesus who's worth living for and a Jesus who's worth dying for? Do you know why you come to church? It's because he's worth it. Do you know why you raise your kids in the things that they should go? It's because he's worth it. Do you know why you lay your life down for Jesus? It's because he's worth it. It's because he's worthy. It's because the only thing I get out of it is a relationship with him because he came and he saved me. Do you know that Jesus this morning? If you don't, write that on the connection card. Check the box. If you're watching online, let us know. We want to hear from you. But if you don't know Christ this morning, come find me after the service. Write it on your connection card. We'll connect sometime this week, and we'll talk to you about what that looks like to move into a relationship with him. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank you for this morning. Thank you for your life, your death, your resurrection. Thank you that your gospel, Lord, it's more than just a story, but it's a story of how you want to have a relationship with us. So let us experience that reality today. Let us face our fears, because you faced the ultimate fear. Jesus, you took the crown of death so we could have the crown of life. We worship you and we thank you this morning. And all God's people said, amen, amen.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We pray this message connected with you, and we hope it gave you another way to connect with Jesus and your New Life family. For more ways to get plugged in here at New Life, you can visit our website at www.newlifeaberdeen.org. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week.